superdelegates are not happy with the plan to reduce their power. In fact, according to Politico, a band of Democratic National Committee superdelegates is now staging a revolt against that plan to reduce their influence, and they're mounting a long-shot bid to block the measure when the DNC meets in Chicago next month. Now, the proposal, of course, which is championed by progressives, would prohibit superdelegates from voting on the first presidential nominating ballot at a contested national convention. Now, of course, the convention actually has to be contested for this to happen, but nonetheless, it is basically removing some of the power from superdelegates, and that is awesome. Now, even as the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee moved forward with the proposal, there were some superdelegates outside of Washington that were organizing some opposition to the passage of these rules. Now, William Owen, one of them, he's a superdelegate and DNC member from Tennessee, who has been contacting fellow DNC members ahead of the gathering, said, quote, "If we don't have a vote, then what good are we? In Chicago, this will not be rubber stamped." I take it he's a little upset that he's starting to lose his power. Well, there's more. You also have Bob Mulholland. Now, he is a superdelegate and DNC member from California. Now, he's been in talks with other superdelegates from the West. And he said, quote, "The more DNC members realize that this so-called reform is to throw them off the floor, I think there will be a lot of complaints in Chicago." And he also likened this to 1968. He said, "Unfortunately, while the Republicans are winning elections and taking over the Supreme Court, we'll be in Chicago looking like 1968. Now, why 1968? Well, that's the last time, pre-2016, there was a bit of unrest at the convention. So, oh, no, we don't want to appear like we're contested, like we're having an issue between the people in power and the base. But that's exactly what we're having. That's exactly what happened in 2016 when we had massive massive delegate walkouts in favor of Bernie Sanders. It's like they know that there's a problem, but again, they want to pretend that there isn't a problem, that there hasn't been a revolt by the base, by progressives that are unhappy with the way that the party is actually going. There was this little thing called Demexit that they have chosen to basically ignore. Well, ignore at their peril. But let me show you why they're actually angry, right? Here's the real reason, right? The superdelegates, according to Politico, stand to lose significant influence over the party's selection of a nominee and are complaining that elected officials and longtime party operatives are being disenfranchised. Oh, are you being disenfranchised? Is your voice not being heard, Mr. Superdelegate? Let me get out the world's tiniest violin for your ass. What about the voters who were disenfranchised by the DNC? What about the voters who, look, voted for Bernie Sanders or caucused for Bernie Sanders, and yet superdelegates in those same states said, yeah, I hear you, but I'm with her. And so they pledged themselves behind Hillary Clinton anyway. What about them? What about their voice? Did they not get disenfranchised? They don't care about that, though. No, what they care about is their own power. And of course, as a superdelegate, you have a degree of power. You can actually go and usurp the will of the voters by saying, I'm going to vote for this person instead. I'm not tied to who the state voted for, whether it be a primary election, which I prefer to caucuses, by the way, because it's more democratic. And that's the whole point. You want the Democratic Party to be actually small d democratic. But unfortunately, we are not. Now, let me give you another quote here. Don Fowler, a former DNC chairman, an outspoken critic of the rules change, asked, quote, for what? Why? Why vote if you can't affect the outcome? Well, that's what they want. They want to affect the outcome. They said that eliminating superdelegates votes in the first ballot would only increase the likelihood of a convention going to a second ballot, where superdelegates would have their votes restored, potentially weighing in against the top vote getter on the first ballot. Oh, so you're afraid of a contested convention? You're afraid of the voters saying one thing and you saying the other? And then what? You've got to override the will of the voters. Well, I mean, that's what we're going to do, but boy, that looks bad for us. In fact, he described that scenario as the, quote, great horror that the party would have a very difficult time surviving. Or maybe you can give up your power and give up being a superdelegate and let the people decide. But of course, they're not going to do that. Representative Jerry Connolly called the proposal, quote, a craven capitulation to what Perez describes as a perception of elitism. That's not a perception, boy. That is, there is an elitism problem within the Democratic Party. And that thing, that's basically shown by the elites inside the party basically picking and choosing their nominees. And look, they can do so. They've admitted that, yes, if we wanted to, behind closed doors and smoke-filled rooms, we could pick our nominee. And you don't have to, you can't do anything about it. We can overrule the will of the people. How is that not elitism? Now, Connolly, like the other opponents of the plan, argued that, quote, disenfranchising the elected leadership of the party would disconnect elected leaders from the party's presidential ticket, ultimately weakening its prospects in 2020. No. Well, all that does is that weakens you politically. So you want to say, look, I was supporting you the whole time. So in return, maybe I get a little something from you because I was your superdelegate. I stood by you and I voted for you. I made sure that you got the nod because it was your turn. And then in return, I get something nice from you. See how this works? But goddamn voters, you got to come and ruin that. DNC Reform Commission, you got to come and ruin that with your progressive ideas and you actually wanting the DNC to be the Democratic Party to be democratic. No, the horror. It is the great horror. Now, not only that, but Connolly added that this proposal was, quote, political malpractice. Oh, it's such political malpractice. Now let's get back to Owen here. Now Owen said, quote, and this is, let me get William Owen. He's that superdelegate from Tennessee. He said, quote, this is serious. We have a saying in the South that's, quote, as worthless as nipples on a boar hog, which means you can suck on them all you want, but you don't get anything out of it. If the proposal is adopted, that's what will be. Now, of course, that's going to get an award for the most awkward quote about boar tits. Look, man, if you're into that, that's weird. In fact, that could be animal abuse. I'm just saying. But really, seriously, though, that's the whole point. We want you to be worthless. We want you to not have power inside the Democratic Party. We don't need superdelegates. Look, here's the thing. The Democratic Party is less small d Democratic than the Republican Party because of superdelegates. Republicans don't have superdelegates. They just don't. And look, I bet maybe some of them do, wish they did, after Trump. But remember, he has an over 90% approval rating among Republican voters. And guess what? The most important thing is they win. They win. In fact, they've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the White House, they've got the courts, they've got a majority of state houses and state legislatures. Why is that? It's not because they have better policy. No, their policies are the same. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. That's all they're selling. Tax cuts for the rich, deregulation. Oh, and of course, fear. Oh, yeah, better get out there. Democrats, they're out to steal your jobs and stuff. The thing is that the real fear here comes from the Republican politicians. They fear their base. They fear incurring the wrath of their base. Why? Because, well, they're active, they get out and vote, and they actually hold their politicians accountable. And yes, right now the Republican Party is so monstrous that they vote for literal monsters. In fact, we've got a swamp monster sitting in the White House right now. But while Republicans fear their base, the Democratic Party loathes theirs. And what they do is that they do anything that they can to go and ignore that base. Superdelegates is one of those ways. We don't have to listen to the people. We don't have to listen to our progressive base. No. I'm with her. I'm with the establishment. I'm with the people that are going to make me tons and tons of money and give me sweet political positions. That's who I'm with. So yeah, I'm a superdelegate, and I want to keep that power so that I can make the decision over the voters, because I don't believe in democracy. This is why they're absolutely screaming bloody murder at this change from the DNC Reform Commission, Unity Reform Commission. Namiki Kantz was on it. James Zogby was on it. There's a lot of great progressives that were on it that actually went to try to limit the power of superdelegates. And I would love to see them completely eliminated. But this is one good first step, that is to remove some of their power. And I think that's good. But as far as they're concerned, this is probably the worst thing that has ever happened to them. And that's why they're fighting so hard against it. The good news about that is that it's very unlikely that their opposition is going to mean a thing when the votes get counted in Chicago. So there is one good thing to take away from this story. Despite their so-called resistance to democracy, democracy might actually win. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.